Good evening, everyone. It is Monday, August 26, 5:30 p.m. Welcome to the council meeting for the City of Lacombe. We'll call the meeting to order. Everyone's had an opportunity to review agendas. Let's start with the consent agenda. Are there any items there that you would like to see removed? Councillor Hibbs?
Sorry, Mayor, I'm kind of jumping the gun, but I do not have any additions, so I would go ahead and move the consent agenda as adopted.
Thank you. And final opportunity. Very good. Please go ahead and vote. And while that's calculating there, you'll notice some empty seats this evening. Councillors Hoekstra and Gullickson will not be joining us this evening. And I have not heard from Councillor Connick, but I believe he will be here shortly. And that is unanimous in favor on the consent agenda. With respect to the overall agenda, I would like for council to consider leaving ordering of items this evening up to the chair, just as a matter of convenience. There are some items here that are interrelated, and it just is cumbersome to follow in order the way that it is here, because some won't be done if certain things don't pass and whatnot. So unless anybody has strong objections to that, that would certainly be my preference. Certainly with respect to items on the agenda, however. Councillor Dallas?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I don't have any objection to you ordering the items as you see fit, so I guess can I just make a motion to accept the agenda as presented? And with mayor's conditions, or
ordering perhaps?
With mayor's ordering, yeah, that would work for me.
Chairs, thank you, I appreciate that. Anyone else? Very good, please go ahead and vote. Hearings do not start until 6 p.m. So let's move on to requests for decision. The first one of those, item 6.1, is Manager Hackett. So if you care to make your way up, thank you. Updates to the municipal development plan. Whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I just have to get my slides open. Very good. Thank you. I'm not used to being first on the docket here. Good evening, Mayor Creasy, members of council. I'm very pleased to be here this evening to present a request for decision related to updates for the municipal development plan. Next slide, please. Very good. So the municipal development plan in Lacombe was adopted in 2015 as bylaw 405. It is a high-level statutory plan that sets out policies for the whole community, so the whole city of Lacombe, across a range of land use categories. And the current municipal development plan has a time frame of 2015 up to 2036, so just over a 20-year projection or a policy set for the next 20 years. The municipal development plan contains 14 land use categories, and they are listed there on the slide. Some are the more traditional ones that you might think of when you think of planning, such as land use and development, residential, commercial, downtown land use, industrial land use. But there are also categories of land uses that are related to these traditional categories, such as economic development or work opportunities, transportation and community mobility, food and agriculture, culture, education and recreation, heritage, natural environment, energy, water and waste, health, safety and public participation, as well as intermunicipal planning. And across these 14 land use categories, each has objectives, each has policies and actions to help direct the future within those land use categories. So across the whole plan, there are 57 objectives, 97 policies, 68 actions, and 35 monitoring indicators. So there's a lot in Lacombe's MDP. The strategic plan for 2024 to 2026 identified a tactic to update the MDP. And so I've just described really that the MDP is a large document. It's quite robust. And I would say that it's also a progressive document. It's investment focused. And I say this because it has not been frequently amended. It has only been amended twice in the last 9 years. There's no record in planning of regular or general complaints where developers or community members are saying that MDP, really, this policy needs to change, or that's standing in the way. There just isn't a record of that happening. And as you can see across the 14 land use categories, it's quite robust. It covers quite a lot. And yet it is halfway through its lifespan. And we do want to be ensuring that it stays investment focused, that it is up to date with trends or with the needs of Lacombe as the community changes, and that it continues to serve the community. So tonight we are proposing, as a first step of the MDP update that's envisioned in the strategic plan, that we do a check-in or kind of a report card or a status report on the MDP and how it's been performing. So this status report would look at the MDP overall and assess its performance in terms of gaps and successes, maybe which areas are underperforming, where we haven't hit the objectives, or where the policies haven't come to fruition yet, or actions haven't been taken, but also where actions have been taken. And this would help us determine what should be considered for an amendment. The status report can then be presented to council to help you determine the next steps. Do you want to open the whole document? Do you want to focus on just certain parts of the MDP? Are there certain areas that are obvious for an update? So tonight, in terms of that status report, if council wishes to proceed with that, there are 3 options presented for the format. Option 1 is the recommended option, and we're referring to it as a balanced option. And that is because it's proposed to cover all 14 land use categories with a sampling of 1 to 3 policies and actions per category. And the criteria to select those, because they are listed as an attachment just for your reference, the criteria would be to consider the policies and actions that are most closely associated with the strategic plan, linked to as many MDP objectives as possible, and can make use of most readily available data. This option, this balanced option, it can be completed within the current department budget and within the current calendar year, so by the end of 2024. The second option is a council-directed option. So council may wish to direct that specific actions and policies out of that list of 94 or 97 policies, for example, be included in the status report. And there may be certain areas that council is really interested in learning more about or having an update about. So depending on the number, range, and scope of council selection, the work could take us into 2025, or it could require additional resources. And the third option that we're referring to as the comprehensive option, again, would cover all 14 land use categories. And in this case, all of the policies and all of the actions within each category. So this option would be large and would very likely extend into 2025 to collect all that data and report on it, and probably would require additional resources over and above what we have in our budget. So it is recommended tonight that Council approves proceeding with Municipal Development Plan Status Report Option 1 balanced. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Hackett. Councilor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make the motion that council approves proceeding with Municipal Development Plan Status Report Option 1 balanced.
Thank you. And Councilor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Thank you, Manager Hackett. Yes, as you pointed out a couple times, it is very extensive, and I appreciate that option 3 was there, and that, you know, it is a possibility, but I do agree that number 1 is our best look forward. I think, you know, we have faith that you are an expert in this, and you have a greater wealth of knowledge in this specific area than maybe, you know, well, than I do personally, than all of these things. So I appreciate that you and your team can bring forward the best items from each one for us to evaluate and to look at from there. And so thank you for that.
Councilor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, I also support option 1 only because I do believe that it respects the fact that it is a long-term plan, but it is a halfway point check-in, and I think that's a good idea to see, like, is this achievable, all the goals that are outlined within that document. Just a question on timing. It talks about status report be presented Q4 2024, and then amendments could occur in 2025. Is the expectation in that case that it would be complete, like done and dusted before the election? Only I just ask that because it can be a little bit awkward if it sort of flows over into the next council. You could be looking at a completely different vision for the community. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing or good thing, not a comment on that, but just for the ease of the process, it would be nice if it got wrapped up prior to that, and that would be an election year.
Mayor Creasy through to Councillor Hibbs. Certainly the report, the status report would come forward option 1 by the end of this year. And then depending, I guess, on where council directed in terms of amendments, if the direction was let's open up the MDP and start from scratch, then I couldn't promise that it would be completed by October. Just as a note, the previous MDP prior to this one was 9 years old when it was opened up and the new one was passed. So, I mean, that certainly would be a possibility, but it took 2 years to produce it. So I think if the amendments were fairly small, maybe there's some percentages in there. There's a percentage of 35% and council would direct that it go to 25 or to 40. Perhaps that type of smaller amendment could occur more quickly. So it really would depend, I think, on the direction that came forward after the status report.
Do we have any more input? Very good. Please go ahead and vote. Judging by the comments, I think we're going to see a lot of green here, but we'll wait for the tabulation to show visually, and that is unanimous. 5-4, 0 against. Thank you, Manager Hackett. Well, there he is at the back of the room. Acting Engineering Manager Bevans, please come up to the front here. Item 6.2, Water Main Asset Management Plan. Whenever you've got your documents ready to go, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and Council. I'm happy to sit in front of you today and to give you I guess, introduction and a presentation. Not so much a summary of the plan itself. It is the attachment in the RFD, but I did want to just highlight the work that has occurred up until this point as it pertains to the water mains in Lacombe. So the asset management plan, the water main asset management plan, is a culmination of that inventory work that we initiated back in 2023. You'll remember there was a presentation in December. And using that information, we now have a more holistic and data-driven asset management plan. It encompasses inventory information, service levels, the risk of the system, excuse me, and funding considerations. It makes, in the RFD, we're highlighting 4 recommendations that it makes. One is to continue assessing the water mains while also planning replacements in a targeted way that synergizes with road replacements, to begin assessing our valve operability and location, to monitor active pressure changes within the pipes, especially PVC pipes, and to begin an active leak detection program. So despite the oldest pipes in Lacombe being installed in the 1950s, the average system age is actually relatively young. It's only about 28 years on average by pipe segment. And this means that the city should expect to see good performance and only targeted replacements in the years to come. And we believe, administration believes, that that can be funded in the current 10-year budget, as outlined in Table 1. However, there is a significant wave of aging pipe illustrated in the RFD and the asset management plan, where that aging pipe from the 1990s and 2000s starts coming forward. However, we don't expect to see that based on the estimated useful life of pipes until the next 30 years. It is important to remember that this is based on an estimation, an engineered estimation of the expected life of pipes based on what they're made of. And it does not exactly represent the in-field replacements that you would necessarily see in any given year as projected. This means that some pipes may overperform that estimated useful life and some may underperform. However, through these active monitoring activities that the AMP recommends, such as the pressure monitoring, the valve assessments, and the leak detections, we can gain greater confidence in the individual pipe segment needs and performance over the coming decades. However, Council may also want to consider a more conservative funding option, and those were outlined briefly in Table 2. That is a very high level kind of synopsis and review of the recommendations for the asset management plan. But I would be happy to take any more direct questions at this time.
Thank you, Acting Manager Bevins. I know you've put a lot of time and effort into this report. It's good to see this work continue on with our asset management plan and see how it all ties together. So thank you for that. Who's up first here? Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, I was very excited to see this on the agenda because, of course, we have some experience now with asset management. I've really loved being able to point to that and use that as an explanation to the residents, especially, and business owners for that matter too, just, you know, how it is that we arrive at the rates that we do, like why we have the budget that we have. And it's so much easier to be able to point to something that really is data driven and not just anecdotal. So this is just an extension of that. Again, like this is such an important core like service that we offer the community. And so to have it that it is data driven, that's, you know, defensible. I just really appreciate that. So I'd go ahead and make the motion that council endorses the water, sorry, Lacombe Water Main Asset Management Plan version 1.0 as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, I too was pleased to see this. As we've seen just this past year, rather significant water main breaks in Calgary and Montreal that were, I don't know, a little unforeseen, I guess, or weren't expected perhaps. And so I like this proactive approach that we're going to monitor and put some sensors in and try and stay on top of it. Even PVC, there's I've seen that in my other business where plastic pipe 30 years ago in houses was thought to be good and now it's not. And I wonder, even with the PVC that's being put in the ground now, if the life expectancy is maybe not, and hopefully it's as good as they say it is, but it's good to stay on top of it and be proactive in our approach. So I too am pleased to see this coming forward. Thank you.
Thankfully, the municipality doesn't use a lot of poly B in its operations. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yes, I appreciate you pointing out the difference between poly B and PVC thing. This is, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I spent the last 7.5 years as an operator for a water utility. And so it's always interesting seeing this stuff and the methods going forward. And I appreciate it. And I think there is a lot of value to be gained from this stuff. And as Councillor Connick pointed out, it is now front and center on people's minds. And, I think it's also great to point out that this was on management's mind and the city's and council's mind before those breaks happened, so that this, people are paying attention to this, and sometimes unfortunate incidents happen like in those other cities, and we're working to avoid that. So thank you.
No additional comments? Concerns? No? Okay. So we do have a motion before us as brought forward by Councillor Hibbs. So please go ahead and vote. That is passed unanimously. Thanks, everyone. We do have 10 minutes or so prior to possibility of starting the public hearings. CEO Gotti.
Quarter 2 variance report might be an option in the time we have.
And I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Which report?
The quarter 2 variance report, I think, would be a suitable item. And
very good.
Manager McKinnon has
Senior Manager McKinnon, are you prepared to present that now?
Yes, I am.
Very good. The floor is yours.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Creasy and Council. Tonight, I'm here to present the Q2 variance report for 2024. The variances are for the timeline of January to June 2024. The purpose is to provide Council with an overview of the financial performance for the first half of 2024, covering the period January to June. Compares actual revenue and expenditures with approved budget. Overall revenues are $506,000 or 1.38% higher than budget for this period. Reasons are franchise fees were $107 or 7.82% higher than budget, driven by higher use of electricity and natural gas in the winter months. Goods and services are under budget by $61,000 because of security clearance revenue not quite meeting budget expectation. Grants are higher than budget by $133,000. The local government fiscal framework grant, which replaced the MSI grant, has a higher operating of approximately $100,000 a year. So this was not budgeted. And also, there was an emergency preparedness grant of $22,000 that the city was eligible for. Interest and penalties are $89,000 higher than budget, and the WCB rebate is also $32,000 over budget. Other sources of revenue are $220,000 over budget because of equipment sales in advance on a midway lights from ATCO, as well as sponsorship revenue. Permits, fines, and licenses have a year-to-date budget shortfall of $48,000. Overall expenses are $1 million or 3.73% under budget, largely due to timing differences and spending across all the different categories. Funding to others shows $532,000 year-to-date variance surplus due to timing of contracts for water and fire. Goods and services costs are currently 2.38% or 95,000 under budget, primarily because of timing differences. Personnel variances are 59,000 because of timing differences. Also, seasonal employees have not yet been hired for the full time. Provincial school requisitions are under budget by 155,000 because of timing differences, and also the increase of the school requisitions usually gets charged in the December invoice of that year. Upgrading replacement costs currently have a surplus of 177,000, expected to align with budget by the end of the year. Overall, the city remains in a strong financial position with a net surplus of approximately 1.5 million at the end of Q2. This surplus is attributed to factors such as higher than expected grant revenues, effective financial management of interest and rebates, along with a lot of timing differences with expenditures. We expect maintaining this positive position to year end to a lower degree. In conclusion, I recommend that Council acknowledge the receipt of the 2024 Q2 variance report, providing the view of the financial standing as we move into the second half of the year. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Manager McKinnon. Appreciate that. Councillor Conick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just one question. First off, I'll make the motion that council acknowledges receipt of the 2024 Q2 financial report. I know we struggle for whatever reason year after year after year with fine revenue. Can't seem to figure out a number there, but I was a little surprised the security clearance is at 170 under so far. I mean, that's a number that we seem to have a pretty good idea on, and yet we're way under. Did they give you any indication as to why that was lower or no?
I know that sometimes timing differences do play a part in that. That sometimes it takes a while for the tickets that are written to be paid. I also know the chief has been looking at adding a new product where there would be online criminal record checks available through LPS. And so I expect that we'll see those numbers rebound, maybe not to the budget level by the end of the year, but certainly next year. I think there's an expectation that it'll meet or even exceed this year's budgeted amount.
No other comments? Thank you, Senior Manager McKinnon. We do have a motion before us. I don't think we need it read back to us for acceptance of the Q2 report, variance report rather. Please go ahead and vote. And that was unanimously in favor as well. Thanks, everyone. If I talked really slowly, it'd be 6 o'clock, but we are legally a minute or two short here. I don't think, are there any short items for the RFDs that we could entertain at this time, Councillor or CAO Gowdy, or should I just read off some meetings and move right into public hearings?
I think either reading off some meetings or 6.8, the Pan-Continental Curling Championships Organizing Committee's request for promotional items might be a quick one.
Very good. Item 6.8 it is. And that is your item, CAO Gowdy, so please proceed.
So the organizing committee for the Pan-Continental Curling Championships in Lacombe has made a request that council extend some promotional items for distribution to the players, some members of the media and volunteers. Approximate value is about $15 per bag, with between 300 and 350 expected packages. Total cost is about $5,200 if I recall. And that would bring the total value of council's committed support for this event to 42,000 and change, I believe, just right around $42,000. I'm sorry that I'm struggling to find my page quickly, but those are the pertinent details. They're looking to promote Lacombe to the attendees and other people that'll be seeing Lacombe for the first time, and just wanting to make sure that they're able to promote the area. And they're also going to be canvassing local businesses for coupons, vouchers, that sort of thing, and putting together an entire package with the centerpiece being the Lacombe promotional items.
Thank you. And just to be clear then, these items for distribution to players and coaches or other personnel, who are these intended for?
I believe that the letter goes, thank you. The letter goes through that, and it is for players, coaches, volunteers, and members of the media.
Thank you for that. I guess I'm just questioning. Obviously they've requested it. Is the quantity correct? It just seems a little conservative if it includes volunteers as well. I mean, some of the numbers we've heard for the number of volunteers that were expected are approaching that number, and that doesn't leave off an awful lot left over. I guess what I'm getting at is I kind of like the idea of some of the Lacombe goods going to everyone to go back all over the world. That's great. I would just as soon deal with the issue once and not have to come back for a little bit more because we were short on quantity of the expected items. So was there a total dollar amount outlined now, or just an overall grand total of our commitment to the championship?
Right now, the estimated cost was $5,250. The letter from the organizing committee goes through the estimates of 222 curlers and coaches from around the world, and then an additional 50 or more attendees and volunteers that would be getting these items. So I think they're probably selective in who's getting it rather than all volunteers. Okay. But certainly if you wanted to look at increasing from a round number of around 42,000 to 45,000, you could increase this estimated approval number to 8,250 rather than the 5,250, and that would make sure there's ample room.
And once again, I'm not looking just to throw money away. I just think that it's being a little conservative for the numbers involved. That's all I was getting at. We'll see if anybody else in council feels the same. Councillor Connick?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Better to have more, and even when you have your 350 promotional swag bags, I mean, I don't know if we need a number there either, just maybe 400 or whatever, but just, yeah, absolutely up those numbers because we want this to be a success. And if we need more swag bags, then so be it. So.
So I appreciate your comments. I think that there's still a need for some sort of financial direction that I would expect. Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So if I'm correct, no motion has been made at this moment in time. So it'd be easy to change the recommended motion. I believe I heard a number of 8,000. Would that be an appropriate dollar value? I just don't want to throw out something that doesn't seem like it has support. And I also echo that. I've been to numerous, tournaments, provincials, things like that. Like those swag bags are actually a pretty big deal, and people like save the items out of that. That's like part of their memories. So I would move that council approves the provision and funding of promotional swag bags for the Lacombe 2024 Pan Continental Curling Championships at an estimated cost of $8,000.
Thank you. No additional input? I think there, because there was a change that I'm expecting that there's a little IT work going on behind the scenes here. So once that comes up, very good. So that has been updated to the $8,000 figure. One final opportunity for input. Seeing none, please go ahead and vote. What an agreeable bunch this evening. That is unanimously in favor as well. Thanks, everyone. I expect that Councillor Gullickson will be excited when he hears that outcome. All right, it's 6:07, so we can legally move into our public hearing portion of the evening. The first one for this evening is a proposed road closure bylaw here for public hearing. It's now 6:07, so as mayor, I will declare the statutory public hearing for bylaw 522 now open, and that this hearing is held pursuant to sections 7, 8, 22, 230, 606, and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as presented, and request our legislative coordinator to confirm the purpose of this public hearing, that the statutory public hearing notice was advertised as required by the city's advertising bylaw, and that any written submissions received and not included in the public hearing agenda package are now read into the record.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and Council. The purpose of the public hearing is to allow the general public to provide input to the proposed bylaw 522, given first reading July 8, 2024. Bylaw 522, if approved, will result in the closure to public travel and creating title to portions of a public roadway lane. The specific area affected is legally described as Lane Road Plan Southwest, body of lane to be closed to Lot 11A, Block 6, Plan 242, number to be assigned, within the northeast quarter section 19, Township 40, Range 26, west of the 4th Meridian. This action complies with Section 22 of the Municipal Government Act in accordance with the city's advertising bylaw 482 and Section 606 of the MGA requirements for advertising. A public hearing notice was advertised in the Lacombe Express on Thursday, August 8th, 2024, and Thursday, August 12th, 2024, as shown in the agenda package. Mayor Creasy and Council, 2 written submissions were received, one of which is included in the agenda package, and the other will now be read into the record. Received Monday, August 26, 2024 at 10:46 a.m. Hi, Matt and Denise. I'm the owner of Wags Holistic Pet Nutrition here in town, 4952 Highway 2A, and I am sending you this email in regards to the road closure and the rezoning of the back alley linking 49C and 49B. Straight to the point, I fully oppose the road closure and the rezoning. The rezoning will affect not only my business, but Lido's and public parking as well. I have multiple different shipping companies that deliver stock to my store weekly, and half those companies are 18-wheelers, 72 feet in length, and can barely make it down the back alley on a good day. I have about 6 to 8 trucks a week with Mustang, Rono, Highway 9, Nosik, and Cisco Lidos being a few of the 72-foot trucks. The proposal to rezone the back alley is totally unrealistic. There is already damage to one of the buildings from drivers hitting it when turning into the alley coming from the east off 49B. Picture provided. For the suggestion to have those same drivers and semi leave west by the thrift store and make those turns in a 72-foot truck, they will 100% hit vehicles in the back parking lot of 49B because they will not have the turning radius to make that turn into 49B. Also, if they are not careful when turning in the back alley, they will hit the vehicle parked on the corner, a red SUV in the picture provided. My trucks typically will come from the south and leave by turning onto 49C towards the 12 going west, along with all of Lido's trucks. Pictures taken today as I was writing this email. If that white Dodge in the picture was parked in place of that red SUV, it more than likely would be hit. Some of these truck drivers are not careful, and I've seen them hit the dumpster before driving a cube truck. I will add that the truck drivers that I have spoken to all have said that the turn by the thrift store is a no-go and they wouldn't even attempt it. There was suggestions to have stock dropped on the side of Lido's, and that also is a joke. My pallets have to be moved with a power jack because they are so heavy, and in winter just getting them off the truck to the back door is a nightmare, let alone moving them from the street, 49B beside Lido's, to the store. Dropping the pallets in the front of the store also was suggested, but again, that takes up parking and there is no way for me to predict when those orders are coming. So there could be no spots available. And then where do we go from there? Where are they going to go? Also, 72-foot trucks can't fit into the front parking lot. I will be at the meeting tonight to voice my concerns, but I wanted to send this email with pictures so there was a clear picture of what I'm describing. Thank you, Lindsay Wagner, owner at Wags Holistic Pet Nutrition. The city received 1 registration from a member of the public to speak this evening.
Thank you, Coordinator Belbono. Appreciate that. Just remind all persons giving oral presentations that clearly state their name, and presentations are to be brief and to the point. The order for statutory public hearing presentations will be as follows. Initially, our development officer or designate. Those in favor, followed by those opposed, and then any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard. With that in mind, as our development officer, Manager Hackett, please begin.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and members of council. Tonight's public hearing, as described, deals with bylaw 522 to close a portion of road in the downtown area. The lane in question is situated west of 49C Avenue in the downtown. The lane closure would allow for the land to be consolidated, or meaning joined up with the parcel beside it, which is lot 11, plan 665EO. And it's an existing parking lot, so combining the closed lane with that parking lot would create a larger parking lot. This air photo shows the lane or the road being proposed for closure. It is south of 4711 49C Avenue, which is commonly referred to as the parking lot behind the BMO. So you can see there in blue the lane that's proposed to be closed. How will traffic be impacted? Administration are anticipating minor impacts as the remainder of the lane will stay open and access from 49B Avenue will be unaffected. 5 properties will have lane access affected if the bylaw is approved, and a utility right-of-way will need to be put in place to protect the utilities that are in the lane. A corner cut, meaning a little corner parcel, will be taken off private property and added on to the remaining lane, become part of the lane to allow for a turning radius for mid-sized transport trucks and garbage trucks. A cross-access agreement through the BMO parking lot will also be put in place. A bylaw also on council's agenda tonight, bylaw 400.62, which council will deal with after or be asked to consider after this bylaw, would deal with the zoning of the lane. So roads or lanes do not have land use zoning. If this lane is closed tonight, then bylaw 400.62 proposes to rezone that lane to allow for an expanded parking lot. This is a drawing from the surveyor showing the parcel of land that's proposed for closure, a road that's proposed for closure. The Municipal Government Act, Section 22, allows a city to close roads by bylaw and requires there be a public hearing. So we are meeting that requirement tonight. In addition to requests for utility right of way, which came about as a result of the advertising of the public hearing, there were suggestions received from the public about preventing blockage of that lane or obstructions in the lane. And administration have committed to monitor the lane should the closure proceed, and have committed to considering suggestions as needed or if needed. The recommendation tonight is that council gives second reading to bylaw 522 to close this portion of lane, and that council resolves to consider third reading of bylaw 522 at the same meeting as second reading, and that council gives third reading to bylaw 522. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Hackett. I would now ask for those wishing to speak in favor of bylaw 522 to please step forward. Mr. Stingle, I would also ask that you turn your microphone on there just for the benefit of those watching at home and in the gallery.
There we are.
Very good, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Administration. My name is Darcy Stingle, and though I wear many hats in our community, tonight I'm here specifically and exclusively as an authorized agent of Y Corp, owners of the Lacombe Hub, formerly the Lacombe Hotel, to express support for the proposed lane closure and parking lot improvements on 49 C Avenue via bylaw 522. Prior to our renovation, the Lacombe Hotel was a low-traffic location. We now have 15 affordable housing units and 4 commercial units comprising several thousand square feet of utilization. And challenging our initial perceptions and anticipations, many of our residential tenants do have a vehicle and they utilize the public parking near and around the building, as well as the associated streets and lots. The commercial units bring with them both employee and customer parking needs, and currently there are only 2 of these 4 units leased, with 1 active at this time and a business new to Lacombe opening next month. Obviously, the revitalization of this building to include those 15 residences and 4 commercial business opportunities has added to the traffic and parking needs of the immediate area. Y Corp acknowledges and appreciates efforts and initiatives in our community that improve traffic and parking potential. For example, the recent realignment of the 49B Avenue parking stalls that increased the overall parking availability in the downtown core for the following reasons. Without adequate parking, the attraction and retention of new and expanded business to the downtown core becomes much more challenging, especially when attempting to accommodate larger businesses who require parking for their staff as well as customers and visitors to our beautiful downtown core. Improved parking stalls help to accommodate the wide range of shapes and sizes of current makes and models of vehicles, promoting multiple forms of transportation to and from the downtown core. And improved parking stalls and layouts, in our opinion, also promote a reduction in vehicle damages and increased pedestrian safeties. Recently, we have seen some beautiful transformations occur in the downtown core, the Downton Co building, the ONA locations, the revitalized A1 Cafe, installation of identity branding, and of course, some of our own concentrated efforts to contribute to the civic and economic vibrancy of downtown Lacombe. We need parking. As such, Y Corp is voicing its support of bylaw 522, as well as other future initiatives that address the vital need of improved parking opportunities, specifically in the downtown core, so that our city may continue to flourish, grow, and adapt to the needs of our citizens, businesses, and visitors. Thank you for allowing me to bring the perspective of Y Corp to you this evening.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of bylaw 522? And third and final call for those wishing to speak in favor of bylaw 522. Seeing none, now move to those wishing to speak who are opposed to bylaw 522. Now is your opportunity. Anybody wishing to do so, please step forward.
Thank you, Mary Creasy. I'm the owner of Wags Holistic Pet Nutrition. My name is Lindsay Wagner. I wrote that previous email that was read out, that was submitted today. On top of that email that was submitted, I tried to include pictures of the logistics that come with that road closure downtown. Our 18 wheelers, our 70-foot to 72-foot trailers that come down there, Lido's has a number of them that I was actually made aware of a few more companies that had those. When we order stuff and the logistics of getting it to our store, we can maybe request the cube trucks coming, like the smaller mid trucks coming, but that's a cost to us. We already, because we're outside of the Red Deer hub for most distribution companies, we have to pay an excess of shipping to get our products from Red Deer, from their distribution to Lacombe. So the downtown businesses have to sometimes add on their shipping costs to the products that are already sold in their stores. So if we have to request a different truck or special requests, those shipping companies could increase the shipping costs, and we have to either eat those or pass those back to the customers. With that being said as well too, there was some plans that were proposed to like try to accommodate Lido's, myself, and there is a new business opening in that strip as well too, just to have our stock dropped off. But in wintertime, especially if they're talking about dropping stock off on the side of Lido's and having like a designated zone for that, the roads aren't plowed enough. It poses a huge logistical problem for us with a power jack to get that pallet to like down the alleyway to our businesses as well. The medical clinic also has a lot of new medical equipment that was delivered that can only be delivered with a power tailgate, which is found on 72-foot trucks, even though cube trucks can have a power drop tailgate. Those big purchases that we do and they do and Lido's does with Cisco and stuff like that and Mustang, they may not have those options. So then what you're asking the businesses to do is have those trucks drive out by the thrift store, potentially hitting a lot of those vehicles that are parked in the back, and not to mention along now the angled parking that is on 49B. Even allotting that tiny little, the corner cut that's there, I would say you're accommodating a cube truck. That was the proposal with that corner cut, was to accommodate the mid-sized trucks and the garbage trucks. There wasn't anything taken into consideration about having a 72-foot truck come down there. And I'm not too sure if you guys received the photos that I had sent as well today too, but if that white Dodge was on the corner, which some of those trucks are parked there sometimes, you're asking a huge ask of the drivers in those big trucks to avoid that, because there's also a pole right there too. I would just ask council to like consider a different way of getting more parking downtown, but with leaving that back alleyway intact for the business owners. Myself and Lido's has been around forever, and they draw huge clients from outside of town that bring revenue into the town. They draw from like Sylvan Lake and Black Falls and Red Deer. People come to their restaurant because of the name. And myself, I offer unique products and experience when you come into the store that people shop with me from outside of the town as well too. So parking is an issue. I do agree with that, but asking us to kind of like flip the cost on like having a road closure and then having our shipping kind of messed up that's a lot to ask on small businesses. So if there is any questions, I can answer about shipping and logistics too. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Just for your information, the photos that you sent in were in fact distributed to senior administration and council alike.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Perfect.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition of bylaw 522? Sorry to interrupt you. Just please turn your microphone on. Ingrid, thank you. Very good.
Good evening, Mr. Reese and Council. My name is Ingrid Heinzmann, and I'm the sister-in-law from Hubert Heinzmann, who owns all kinds of business in downtown. I'm constantly fixing the sides because trucks, and I don't know which way they're coming, eating my corner. It is at the Toronto Dominion Bank. I just fixed it. I don't know how many times already. And now I have to fix at the optometrist because this whole thing went the other way. In the letter I got here and I looked up what a mid-size truck is, it's 48 to 53 feet. But the trucks are bigger now. Everything gets bigger, but our roads just don't expand. So there must be somehow a solution. I know I did not even know the corner from this property where people drive on. I don't know where my property goes, and it's the road in the back. So I sold it, which I have no problem with it because what does it do for me? But it's the length of the vehicles now, and who knows what the future holds, but our buildings are there. So I'm fixing and fixing should have an end somewhere. So is there other way we can solve this problem? And I know when I come with my truck, I cannot go on the Bank of Montreal truck between two cars. I have to back up or don't even go there when I see it's too narrow. But all our cars grow and not the parking lots. So that's my thought.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it, Mrs. Heinzmann. Anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition of bylaw 522? Second call for anyone who wishes to speak in opposition of bylaw 522. And third and final call for those wishing to speak in opposition of bylaw 522. Seeing none, I would ask that any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard at this time, now is your opportunity to do so. Please come forward. And I'm seeing no takers on that offer for those deemed to be affected. Therefore, I declare the public hearing for bylaw 522 now closed at 6:29 p.m. And then on your agendas, we'll move into requests for decision. Item 6.3 pertaining to the same bylaw 522 and the road closure before us this evening for second and possibly third reading. Manager Hackett, it looks like you're ready to go, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. The recommendation for bylaw 522 is for council to give second and third reading tonight for the road closure for a portion of lane at lot 11A, block 6, with the plan number to be assigned by land titles. Director Lapointe has additional information related to the access and travel concerns that we've heard about this evening. If he would like to add that now, thank you.
For council's benefit, I did want to mention that the DARP committee was aware of the access and traffic concerns referenced during the public hearing this evening. They noted the current movements from the alley onto 49C Avenue were reviewed during the plaza design discussions and did not always appear to occur legally. When observed, the turns required larger semi-silos trucks to veer into the opposite traffic lane along 49C Avenue. Additionally, the committee noted the damage to adjacent buildings under the current traffic conditions. I did also want to point out that these movements will become less feasible with the newly approved parking stalls within the 49C Plaza design.
Thank you for that input. Manager Hackett, you had more?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. That is all I had this evening.
Very good, thank you. So I guess that certainly reinforced some of the issues that some of the business owners talked about in the alleys and whatnot. And yeah, I mean, as much as I feel for them, nobody likes a damaged building. However, those are very large trucks to be operating within the downtown area, wherever you're at. So unfortunately, accidents do happen. I think that it's important to know that as valued business owners, council does not entertain ideas like this with the expressed intent of making business difficult, and certainly not more expensive for any of you. However, we are charged with coming up with ideas that are in the best interest of the city overall, and that we will do regardless of the decision that is made on this particular item. One item I'm a little confused about: the truck delivery. It's been a contentious issue, both among council and I think certainly on the word on the street as well. I've had lots of input. I guess I'm not totally sold why larger trucks cannot back into the alley, even with this closed, as opposed to driving in truck first, or tractor first rather, I guess, for some of these bigger units. CEO Gowdy?
I don't think that's a situation that they couldn't do that. I think it would just require extra maneuvering, which means extra time. And most trucking companies are going to look at that extra time and look to the business owner to say, well, it's taking more time to deliver to your business. Therefore, I'm going to have to charge more to do that delivery because it's tying up the equipment longer. So I think that it is feasible, but there's probably a time impact between tractor first versus trailer first.
Right. And that I have no reason to doubt that. However, these larger trucks deliver goods in every city in the country, and there are other difficult areas. And I can't help but think that there is a feasible way for them to accomplish the same here. I don't know. It seems odd to me that this is somehow that unique. Is it different than what it exists now, this proposed change? Absolutely. There's no question about it. But I just don't see it as being unattainable. Perhaps a little more organization on behalf of the delivery companies to let the businesses know that they're coming. If there's upgrades we need to do and not have parking, perhaps as close as it is to the entrance off of the street onto the alley. I have no idea what all the items might be, but I think there has to be a way that we can accomplish the increase in parking, which this design has shown to provide, and do it in a way that's not going to negatively impact our businesses, because that is not what this council has been about, certainly. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I've personally drove truck a lot, and I sympathize with the businesses, and they're expressing the inconvenience of the trucking companies. What frustrates myself is it's not the fault of you as businesses, the damage to the buildings. It's the lack of competent drivers there is out there within the driving industry that is not attacking this delivery of our very successful businesses to simply head down that alley across the street to the west and back up. It's only, the council says amount of time. It's only what, 100, 150 feet. You back in straight across. I've drove Super Bs that are 90 feet. That I've seen Super Bs drive around town. Like the trucking industry does not have competent drivers to make good practical decisions. That is not the fault of you, the businesses that are trying to advocate for the trucking companies. Your Cisco driver has delivered to Lidl's for probably 15, 20 years, I recall. So, and he's more than competent to make a good decision. That is not the reflection of the whole trucking industry, and that is extremely unfortunate. So I understand you are advocating for your delivery companies. That's not your fault. That's their lack of competent drivers. And they could completely come down from the south side of Lido's, swing west, back straight across. No difference than coming from the east side. So I'm actually more frustrated for the poor decision-making that these drivers are making and how that they are, and it's their fault for the damage, not yourselves. I know you feel bad and it's a heart and pride of your buildings, but this is a reflection on your driver, the drivers of the companies. So that's my position.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. This is a one where I feel in favor of this, despite opposition from members of the community and how it directly involves them. I feel that there was already unsafe action happening and damage to the community as it is. So that unfortunately that argument doesn't work to saying that keeping it the way it is will prevent it from happening in the future, because we're not seeing that. I believe that maybe closing it will force changes and people will have to act differently accordingly. I do agree that they can still access the property, whether backing up or using different trucks based on what they feel is needed, and certainly are not interested in making things more difficult for our community members and businesses. As such, I'll make the recommended motion that council gives second reading to bylaw 522.
Thank you. Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I can certainly appreciate the business owners' concerns. I too ran a business downtown and I used to have Sears trucks come through their tractor trailers. They weren't 48-foot trailers though, or 53-foot trailers. They were pup trailers and they could make that corner. Now, I too, many moons ago, drove truck for Highway 9 for 6 years, and the community that I served was Innisfil. And there were many tight back alleys, areas. But here again, I'm with Councillor Ross. I think you could, not without some difficulty, but you could come off of 12, travel east down 49B, and then back on that lane. Would it require a little, I know I passed by Lidl's tonight, there's a black truck on the corner there. It might require a phone call to Lidl's to say, hey, black truck that's there right behind your building, if you could move it, terrific. And then I can back in there, no problem. So I understand your concerns, but even with Highway 9, I know if we couldn't deliver, we'd send a 5-ton out, a body job out to make that delivery. So it's, I understand where you're coming from, but I purposely drove over there tonight on my way here. That's why I was a little bit late, just to see turning radiuses and so forth. And a good truck driver can make that corner. They can back that in there, I think. Thank you.
Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I just want to make a couple comments. The fact that damage is already happening doesn't necessarily mean that that won't preclude increasing amount of damage happening. If you've got drivers that are now asked to do something a little bit more difficult than they have been doing in the past, it only seems logical to me that that actually would increase, not stay the same. I feel like this is potentially creating a disservice to our downtown businesses and may end up dissuading businesses from wanting to operate in that area just because of the simple awkwardness of access. I don't currently, but I did at one time work downtown, so I'm very well acquainted with what that back parking lot looks like. And honestly, unless you are there on a regular basis, it's hard to really fathom the amount of traffic, the size of the traffic, the complexity of action that happens back there, the amount of like vehicle damage that happens back there already right now is actually, you'd be surprised. And so we're just going to make it just that much more complicated. And I just want to echo what one of the speakers during the public hearing commented, saying that there's other ways to address parking. And yes, that is an issue downtown, but there are other ways to address that. And I actually do believe that. And I feel like there are other better options than this. I will not, unfortunately, be supporting this reading. It's awkward for me to take what administration is recommending, especially when they say, no, we've done the math, we've done the background, you know, the calculations, whatever. And I honestly respect that. And I don't mean to be, you know, seeming to throw that out the window, but just, I have such an anecdotal experience with what that looks like versus real life versus paper that I can't support this, this closure. So that is my thoughts on it.
Thank you. Just so we're all clear on the information that was put forward, am I correct in understanding that it was the body trucks, the 5 tons and those kinds of things that were expected to be able to easily negotiate turning left and going around the loop, I'm going to call it. There was no expectation of a highway van, which is normally a 50-foot or 53-foot, whatever it is, trailer and tractor, making a, as I think, 73-foot unit. There was never any intention of those being able to turn there, was there? Or am I incorrect?
No, you're correct. We had looked at a design vehicle for this. I believe it was a medium duty truck. Do you recall the actual design? We'd talked about this. It's a few weeks back now, but
It's called an HSU, so it's equivalent to a large garbage truck type vehicle. It's like a large cube van or a large garbage truck type vehicle that would navigate lanes. And that's the lane standard that would exist in any lane in Lacombe.
Okay. Thank you. So basically then what we're talking about here changing is the access for larger highway type vans and tractor trailer units. And those would either have to back in, or I suppose a less desirable option is unload on 49C or whatever it is, which I don't find particularly helpful to businesses.
yes, that's accurate. You're
Okay.
correct.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Casey. Perhaps somebody has it just off the top of their head. What is the current parking restriction from entrances to laneways? Is there one, like 3 meters or?
Director Pichet is going to have a look. I would say in practice, I think it's about 1 meter that is enforced typically.
Okay. So thank you for bringing that up, Councillor Dallas. Once again, not an easy decision this because it does affect some businesses. I, for one, think that this is doable. However, if we are going to go through with it, then I think that we need to certainly make sure that it is accessible for those larger vans, because to have to change a type of delivery truck for one location is not acceptable, in my opinion. So if it requires a greater setback on the alley to the north across the street, which I expect they will pull into so that they can in fact back up into the alley behind the businesses that are here, then I think that's something that we have to look at. And I'm not prepared to endorse it if in fact we don't do that, because that is the expectation or the path forward that we're leaving these large units to use is backing in through there. And that is, I expect, the only logical way because to do it directly off a street, I don't think is very realistic to back in off the street. If they're pulling into the alley and backing up across the street into it, I think is very doable. I don't have a great amount of trucking experience, but I mean, we see these monster rigs back into loading docks and whatnot that are far longer than what this alley would be. So as long as we're prepared to leave them an accessible spot to do this, I am prepared to endorse it. And if that's something that we need to leave for a third reading, then that's fine. But it's important that we leave a positive path forward to make provision for these trucks to be able to deliver goods to these businesses. CEO Gowdy?
Just want to make sure I understood your comment there. Essentially, you're saying, I want to make sure before supporting this and passing this, that trucks are going to be able to navigate on 49B to pull into an alley and then back in. And if that requires the changing of the setbacks for the no parking zones, so be it. I would want to know what that is. How many spots are we losing before I would consider third reading? Is that an accurate understanding of what you're saying?
You hit the nail on the head. However, currently we do have second reading before us. And if there's any other comment, Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I was actually going to ask if I could amend my motion to include that information, to include the assessment of setback. Or
I think you just did.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And we will give IT a minute to add that on the motion. And because that one was already read into the record, we discussed it. I think that we should handle the amendment as a separate item, and I won't expect IT to do it. So the parking assessment, did you word it by Councillor Dallas?
Sorry, can you repeat what you asked?
The item that you wanted added in as an amendment was for parking assessment?
Yes, thank you. Parking assessment and setback assessment on
Parking
laneway.
and setback. Thank you. I appreciate that. So we'll vote on that first by a show of hands. Those who want to include those two items for the parking and setback assessment as outlined by Councillor Dallas, please indicate by a show of hands for those in favor. And any opposed? Therefore, that is carried. Now IT can continue on with adding those items in the original motion. Thank you. As we know from past experience, adding things off the cuff to our voting system is not an easy item, so I'll take the pressure off a little bit and just go through our next meetings. We've got 2 regular meetings, both in chambers at 5:30 p.m. The first one is on September 9th, followed by another meeting on September 23rd. And then we have a committee of the whole meeting, same time and place, 5:30 p.m. here at City Hall. And that is scheduled for Monday, October the 7th. Interesting to see scheduling for October. See our summer slipping away from us. CEO Gowdy.
I'm sorry, that's
not a problem. Never has there been so much silence at a municipal meeting ever. Good. So I've been informed that that has been uploaded to our machines. And 6.3A reads that council gives second reading to bylaw 522 to include the parking assessment and parking setbacks. Councillor Dallas, is that worded how you'd intended?
That reads suitably to me.
Thank you. Any additional comments or concerns? Please go ahead and vote. And that is passed by a margin of 4-1. Opposed was Councillor Gibbs. Thank you. So now, given the inclusion of those 2 items that will be required for third reading, I expect some of the individuals here would like to have an idea when that may be brought forward to for consideration. Is that something that will be ready for next meeting, or is that unrealistic? CAO Gowdy.
That is something that we'll have for our next meeting. We'll make sure to have the modeling done on a WB21, which is the design vehicle that's discussed for those deliveries. And we'll have that and have some recommendations for how parking might be adjusted if required to accommodate that movement.
Very good. I know it's important to a lot of them here in the gallery today, and I want you to know that your business is appreciated and council does their best to try and take your considerations into account, with the realization that we do have 15,000 citizens in the community to think of, not just our businesses, but you are genuinely appreciated. And thank you for attending this evening. You're certainly welcome to stay for whatever portion of the meeting that you choose. The next item up is our land use bylaw public hearing. Our second bylaw public hearing this evening for bylaw 400.62. As mayor, I declare the statutory public hearing for bylaw 400.62 now open, and that this hearing is held pursuant to sections 7, 8, 230, 606, 640, and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended, and request our legislative coordinator to confirm the purpose of this public hearing, that the statutory public hearing notice was advertised as required by our city advertising bylaw, and that any written submissions received and not included in the public hearing agenda package are now read into the record. Coordinator Bellabono.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and Council. The purpose of the public hearing is to allow the general public to provide input to the proposed amending bylaw 400.62, given first reading July 8, 2024. Bylaw 400.62 provides to amend land use bylaw 400. Bylaw 400.62, if approved, will create a land use district, direct control district, DC3, and apply the district to land at lot 11, plan 665EO, 4711 49C Avenue, and to a closed portion of the adjacent land in accordance with the city's advertising bylaw 482 and section 606 of the MGA requirements for advertising. Public hearing notice was advertised in the Lacombe Express on Thursday, August 8th, 2024, and Thursday, August 12th, 2024, as shown in the agenda package. No written submissions were received, and we received no registrants from members of the public to speak.
Thank you. And I know it may seem odd to be doing this item, given we didn't do third reading on the previous item. However, legislatively, this was advertised as a public hearing, and we are required to follow through according to the Municipal Government Act, as was promised to the public. So once again, all persons giving oral presentations are to clearly state their name, and presentations are to be brief and to the point, which I expect they will be. The order of the statutory public hearing presentation will be development officer or designate, followed by those in favor, then those opposed, and finally any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard. Manager Hackett, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor Creasy, members of council. Bylaw 400.62 does deal with the same parcels of land that we just were speaking with in bylaw 522. The purpose of the bylaw really is twofold. First is to create a new direct control district, which would be our third direct control district in the land use bylaw. And it would be focused on allowing only one use, and that would be a parking facility. And secondly, to apply this DC3 district at a specific location in the downtown, which is the existing parcel at lot 11, plan 665EO, which is the civic address at 4711 49C Avenue, to change that from its current commercial designation to the DC3 district, and to apply it to a portion of closed lane adjacent to this property if that lane were to be closed. This would create a larger parking lot in the downtown. The air photo here does show the subject property. It's a very similar air photo to the one we were looking at in bylaw 522, but shown here are two parcels of land. In blue is the civic address of 4711 49C Avenue. That is an existing parking lot that would be subject to the direct control district zoning if approved. And the parcel in orange is the portion of land lane proposed to be closed. There is a portion, a triangle of red land shown in this drawing as well, which is a future corner cut subdivided from the parcel at 4716 49B Avenue. The proposal under bylaw 400.62 would redesignate the subject parcels from downtown commercial C1 district and lane, which has no zoning, to direct control district 3. DC3, as I said, would have one use, and that would be as a permitted use, a parking facility. Now, often for a direct control district, council is listed as the approving authority. However, it is proposed for this direct control district, since there's only one land use proposed, and it's a very straightforward land use, that council delegate authority for development approvals to the development authority. The surrounding parcels, as shown in this photograph in purple, are primarily C1, so commercial district. As well, there is some R4 properties a few blocks away, and some transitional commercial district C3 as well. In terms of planning document direction, the municipal development plan has no specific direction related to these parcels or to this development, but it does contain policies for well-designed parking areas and pedestrian-friendly planning, and a proposed cross-access agreement for the future consolidated parcel, if council were to close the lane and consolidate these parcels, would continue to allow both vehicular and pedestrian circulation, so would meet the MDP. The parcels also fall within the Downtown Area Redevelopment Plan, or the DARP, and the DARP recommends that new parking lots be developed to a higher standard, which would include asphalt, landscaping, lighting, and these policies will be reviewed at the time that a development permit is applied for. So a new parking lot, an enlarged parking lot, if it were to go ahead, would require a development permit after following the rezoning. I'm going to change the recommendation a little bit on the fly here. The first recommendation is that council gives second reading to bylaw 400.62 as presented, and that no further readings be given tonight, pending bylaw 520, the passing of bylaw 522. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Hackett. But now ask that those wishing to speak in favor of bylaw 400.62, now is your opportunity to do so.
Good evening, Mayor Creasy, Council, and thank you to Councillor Hibbs for catching us in the hallway before we all took off. Again, representing Y Corp, owners of the Lacombe Hotel, now the Lacombe Hub. I would just like to, first of all, thank you all for hearing us out today. We were having a great chat, and we don't mean to oppose or go for or against each other, because we all want to build a bigger, better Lacombe. And we know we all have our issues and our gripes and our considerations, but we have a nice civil conversation in the hallway, and I think all parties are expressing a desire to make sure that Lacombe is the vibrant, thriving, welcoming community that we know it can be. Specific to this particular bylaw in zoning for the parking lot, to reiterate some of my earlier comments during bylaw 522, we at the LH experience very limited parking. In fact, we have no designated parking to any building on that triangular block, from the Flatiron to the medical building, our building, the downtown plaza as well. That entire block is 100% reliant on public parking. There is no parking whatsoever along the north border of that triangular block. We are on Main Street, and from the Flatiron all the way to the lights, there is no parking on the main drag. There's limited parking on Main Street altogether, whether you're east or westbound. That does affect specifically one of our tenants, the north-facing Elysian and Lux, the studio. That's right at the end of 50th there. We also have a limited number of parking stalls on 49C as it is. I believe there's 9 on the north side, plus 1 or 2 handicap stalls, and only 3 on the south side once you accommodate the no parking for the fire hydrant, as well as the tight corner from Main Street down into 49C. We'd like to comment that downtown can't grow. It's a finite land mass. There is no way to add more to it. It is what it is, and it has been that way since the 1890s. Lacombe has sprung up around the downtown core. That's what it was established as, and that's why we have these weird, wonky, angular streets and these weird, crazy little lots. But without any additional land to acquire, creating additional parking, though we're happy to hear and contribute and voice our support for novel and innovative ideas on how to achieve that, without starting to look at tearing down existing buildings to create lot space, which you mentioned tear down a downtown building to anyone in Lacombe and you're met with daggers. Even before you can specify it's the rattiest, oldest building in town, they still don't want it affected because downtown is, to many, a crown jewel of Lacombe. We realize that the proposal that rolls into this particular bylaw does affect a number of businesses in the downtown core, primarily with their shipping and receiving. We don't want them to suffer a business loss or past long costs or accessibility issues, but we also don't want the downtown core to suffer any potential future growth or prospective businesses to set up because they don't have access to parking. There's a number of parking stalls in the back of buildings throughout the downtown core. They're already alley adjacent. There's a number of underutilized parking stalls that have been identified by Y Corp as well as the city of Lacombe in the future for potential development or redevelopment opportunities. But in the efforts to spearhead walkability, pedestrian friendliness, accommodate the larger dualies as well as the smaller electric vehicles, scooters, increased pedestrian traffic and safety concerns, we feel that this is a positive approach, not without its hiccups, but we fully support this and other initiatives that propose to increase the parking availability to all downtown businesses, regardless of their location. This one is specific to 49C and 49B and the block in between. However, we do know that 50th becomes quite busy when we start to accommodate summer months and there are patios from our various restaurants. Parking becomes a very hot commodity, and we encourage council to begin thinking forward, not just next year or 2 years from now, but what does downtown Lacombe look like in 5 or 10 or 15 years as our vehicles get bigger and busier, as delivery becomes more complicated, as businesses come and go, or perhaps pass us by simply because there is a finite resource, and that is parking. That would be perhaps some comments for consideration regarding this particular bylaw rolling out of 522. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of bylaw 400.62? Please come forward. Third and final call for anyone wishing to speak in favor of 400.62. Very good. Now for those who wish to speak in opposition of 400.62, this is your opportunity.
Hello again. Just to echo what he was saying is there could be a solution to all of this. And myself, as a local business downtown, I would like to see Lacombe thrive and grow and have everybody eat their cake too, right? But with the parking, I'll try to keep my comments just to the parking lot downtown. Being back there every day, I think there needs to be better bylaw enforcement down there. That parking lot at the BMO is a 2-hour parking stall. There is multiple people that park all day back there that own businesses that take up valuable spots for the general public to park in. A couple years ago, were starting to get ticketed because the doctors and the nurses, even myself was a culprit of this, that we would park back there all day because we didn't want our spots in the front of Lido's and Wags to be taken up by us, so we would have more room for the public. And the hub, when people started moving in there, they would park in the Lido's Wags parking lot as well too. The front of our building is private, and then with the sidewalk with the big elm trees on the east side of that, that's all public parking. Also with the hub, I'm not too sure why the hub, I don't know, a general question, why it was approved without having the adequate parking put in place first, or if that was even looked at when the hub was approved to be built there. They also do have parking on the east side of Elite Bridal. So I know it's not like a whole lot of spaces, but there is parking for the Flatiron Baron and Elite Bridal on that east side. Also, I'm not sure when DARP did their research, like when that report was formulated, but my question for that would be, did DARP do that research before 49B was angled parking? That's a question that I would have, because I feel like that would affects how wide that road is for the turning radius of those big semis as well too. But I think again, if you end up closing that back alley, you're going to have a little bit of problems with shipping. What happens if we have two trucks at the same time and that alleyway is gone? Lido's and their Cisco trucks, they spend an hour in the back alley unloading produce. And then if a truck of for me comes, what will they have to do? Will they have to wait in the back alley blocking traffic? Will they have to wait on 49C or B blocking traffic, waiting for a Cisco truck to vacate the back alleyway? There's no way that two can maybe you can't back in on 49B angled back on that loop. So just some of my thoughts, but I would love to have a solution in both favors. So, but thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Some questions were posed there, and a public hearing is not the time for us to be answering those types of things, but certainly if you're able to stay for the RFD portion, perhaps we can delve into those a little deeper. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition of bylaw 400.62? And one more call for those wishing to speak in opposition. Seeing none, we will proceed to asking any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard on this item. Bylaw 400.62. This is your opportunity to do so. And I see no one stepping forward. And with that in mind, I declare the public hearing for bylaw 400.62 to be closed at 7:12 p.m. And item 6.4. Once again, a little cumbersome with some of these items because I don't think that it's going to be entertained for motions on this item, given that we still have some information outstanding. Is that correct, CEO Gowdy?
We're still recommending second reading, but we would not recommend proceeding to third reading this evening until such time as you've been satisfied that the other bylaw meets your needs.
Very good. Manager Hackett.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I have nothing to add to CAO Gowdy's comments other than prior to third reading, we can bring back the follow-up with Ms. Wagner and bring the answers back to her questions regarding parking in the downtown, and I will have to follow up what the other question was, but we will bring that back before third reading.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I do applaud Mrs. Wagner's comments. What I do like about, I think all council, we're all passionate for businesses to succeed, and I hope we can have some compromises for a result for both. And so, anyways, going forward, I'd like to make the motion that council gives second reading to bylaw 400.62 as presented.
Thanks, Councillor Ross. So one question I believe was why was a particular development allowed to proceed without adequate or proper parking, I think was the wording, and a very fair question. But I think you'll come to realize there are extremely few businesses in downtown Lacombe that have adequate or proper parking for any reasonable standard. That was just not in the design of the city when it was first contemplated, when it was horses and whatnot. So CEO Gaudi, did you have anything to add to that? Is that a fair assessment that by any reasonable standard, the majority of businesses do not have the required parking, and certainly not private required parking on each individual parcel?
It depends on your definition of required, I guess. That development itself does not require on-site parking, and up to 100% variance can be given for the requirement for on-site parking under the land use bylaw. So it would be nice to have on-street parking, and there's a logical rationale for why you'd expect some. But because of the configuration of the zero lot line buildings downtown, many of them don't have space for parking, and so those have been relaxed as of land use bylaw 400 when that was passed. Actually provided the development authority up to 100% variance on downtown parking requirements in the C1 zoning. Is that right?
Very good, and certainly a very honest answer. However, the only reason there's none is required is because we've adjusted the bylaws to suggest that there's none required. I think any rational individual would say that of course there has to be parking for, there isn't any room available. So I hope that kind of answers your question in that regard. It's that particular development that you referenced is not special in that way. There are many downtown who are identical in that regard. And I'll be honest with you, I do not recall what the second question was. When the DARP study was okay. Okay, very good. I think that's a fair question. I will give that to manager or sorry for the demotion. It's all good. That'll teach you for taking holidays.
It actually wasn't 49B, it was 49C. So exiting the alley onto 49C was when we were looking at it. So that parking has been the same. We're only changing it now as we move forward.
Appreciate that, Director Lapointe. Does that help? Yeah, very good. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. When I first decided to run for city council, I never had an idea of how much discussions there would be on parking. I had grand illusions of beautiful topics that, and yet I am surprised that this would, I would say, is probably the second most common topic of discussion for our residents and our community. And you know, as we see other communities move away from parking requirements to, you know, it's obviously it's larger cities removing large amounts of parking in their cores, but you know, our biggest demand is to go the opposite direction and increase it, and so this is difficult. So I apologize. Did somebody read the motion already?
Yes,
yeah, that's what I thought. Okay,
we
thank
have
you.
A motion on the floor.
I just, yeah, I'm wrapped here. So I look forward to seeing what happens on the other motion from before. And no matter what happens, I think we've highlighted some issues here. And what I do hope is that the city does continue to look forward at the corner cut, regardless of what happens with either of these other two. I think it's highlighted some need for traffic investigation in that laneway. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dallas. I believe that Councillor Ross did have a motion on the floor.
I just have another
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I am too looking forward to what the corner cut can increase the ease of accessibility for back-in, and I hope that you can forward that information to the trucking companies that is a a city business solution to try to, and you're not going to fit two 53-foot trailers in that alley, regardless of what other solutions there are. I guess maybe this question is more directed to DARP committee or CO Gowdy. If there's ever been a thought of collaboratively between the city and the businesses to maybe purchase, for example, the old motel lot, to have that only for staff parking, so you increase the accessibility of customers to have better access to the businesses and for on-street parking. I don't know, is that some kind of an investment that should be looked into? I commend all the businesses or owners trying to find parking where it still leaves availability for the customers. That's the end goal, is customer convenience, customer accessibility. And I'm sorry, but in this town, everybody wants to park right in front of where they want to go. This is Lacombe. They'll drive around and around and around to get to park in front of exactly where they want to go without parking a block away. And it's sometimes frustrating being all my life, is everybody in this town wants convenience. If you were in Red Deer or somewhere, if you got 2 or 3 blocks, you'd consider it a success. But so at the end of the day, we're trying to increase our business, make our businesses more viable, and make our beautiful downtown more awareness. And yeah, I appreciate your passion for your community and your business, and that's what you got to try to work with. So just a thought to the DARP committee, because that is compromised of all downtown local businesses. How do we enhance Lacombe even farther? So
an interesting point with additional parking. It was some time ago that we did put out an RFP for ideas and proposals for parking ideas on public lands, city-owned lands. While that may have not been an expectation that it was on private property, certainly any businessman that thought it was a wise idea to do so, that's certainly a viable use for property in many areas, certainly in our downtown core. So who knows what could become of that. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I just want to reiterate again something that one of the speakers said about how there are other options, and that is definitely another option. I just wanted to make a quick comment that I will be voting against second reading. However, I look forward to potentially having my mind changed for the third reading. That's always an option. So if something favorable next time gets presented, then things could be different.
CO Gowdy, I didn't see that you had your light on earlier. Did I not acknowledge you?
It was only to respond to yourself through you to Councillor Ross's question. I'm not aware of, you actually kind of answered it. I'm not aware of any initiatives where the city has collaboratively looked at purchasing a lot with other business owners for the purpose you discussed.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we do have a motion on the floor by Councillor Ross, and there's been a bit of discussion. I believe it was a recommended motion, but I will just have our legislative coordinator read that back to us so there's no confusion.
Mayor Creasy, Councillor Ross's motion is that council gives second reading to bylaw 400.62 as presented.
Thank you. No more input. Please go ahead and vote. And passed by a margin of 4-1. Councillor in opposition was Councillor Hibbs. So noted. I believe that takes us down to item 6.5. So many notes and scribbles on my page, I'm hard pressed to follow my own. Bylaw 459.1, the Council Code of Conduct amendment here before us for first and possibly second reading. Coordinator Bellabono.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and Council. This evening, administration is proposing an amendment to Council's Code of Conduct, Bylaw 459, with two key changes. One, inclusion of members appointed by Council to commissions, boards, and committees, known as CBCs. And two, introduction of an annual sign-off requirement for a statement of Council Code of Conduct. The Code of Conduct ensures that elected officials remain independent, impartial, and responsible to the public by upholding high standards of conduct. During a review of Bylaw 459, it was noted that council-appointed members of CBCs were not included in the bylaw's adherence requirements. This omission could lead to gaps or inconsistencies in governance standards. The proposed amendment, Bylaw 459.1, will include CBC members, ensuring they are also governed by the same core values and principles as elected officials. Our research shows that many municipalities are adopting the best practice of an annual review and sign off of their code of conduct, moving beyond a once per term review. We recommend that council implement this practice by reviewing the code annually during the organizational meeting, with members signing the statement of code of conduct immediately after. These amendments will strengthen our governance framework, ensuring that all council appointed members are elected and elected officials adhere to the highest standards of ethical conduct. Administration invites council to consider the proposed amendments to Bylaw 459 for improved transparency, consistency, and accountability. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Coordinator Bellabono. So in my opinion, two relatively benign items. As far as the annual acknowledgement and acceptance for our code of conduct, relatively minor thing, and I don't think that it hurts any of us. Only 4 times or whatever during the term, and it's a good refresher for each and every one of us. It was suggested that many communities are adopting this, and use an interesting term. I think it's a relatively small number, unless I'm mistaken. However, I would rather be on the leading edge of something like this. It is a positive thing, as opposed to waiting till everyone else has entertained the idea. I think this was talked about at a couple of AMAs ago, or the last one, and some other meetings, and I see no issue with it myself. However, I look forward to seeing what other councillors think of it and what they have in mind. Councillor Koenig.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's good practice. I think it just a reminder every once a year of the expectations of council. My question is, I'm just looking at the statement of council code of conduct, the Schedule A. Would this be the similar one that members on commissions and boards would sign as well? Or the only reason I bring that up is that number 9 on there talks about issue directives only to the CAO. Does that apply to a member on a commission as well, or how does that, or would this statement be different for those that are on commissions or boards or anything like that?
Coordinator Bellabono.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. To Councillor Connick's question, the statement of code of conduct would be signed by council members, and in the commission, board, and committees, they do an office and oath that they sign off on, and that would be amended, like it would be adjusted to refer to the code of conduct, the council code of conduct, and that would be included in their sign off. So they wouldn't have the statement to sign off. They would have, when they get their appointment, we give them an oath of office, and the wording in that oath of office would include the code of conduct.
So they would use this document as a reference to their conduct. However, they're not expected to sign off on that each and every year then.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Councillor Koenig.
I would be prepared to make that first motion then. That I'm sorry, I scrolled past it. Council give first reading of bylaw 459.1 as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. More input? Please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimous in favor. Here to entertain the second reading this evening as well, or no? Councillor Hibbs?
Yes, I would move that council give second reading to bylaw 459.1 as presented. I think it's a great addition to our current bylaw.
Thank you. So we do have 2 members missing. Do we want to include any special items for them to have to follow, or? Probably not appropriate, but we have to give them a hard time because I think they are enjoying some deserved time off and time away. So good for them. In any event, I see no additional input for the second reading, so please proceed to vote. Expect a similar, and in fact, it is unanimously in favor. Same as the first, so thanks everyone. And then we can move into housekeeping item for bylaw 521, the repeal bylaw, our item 6.6. And Coordinator Bellabono, I believe you're handling that one as well.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Administration is presenting bylaw 521, repeal of inactive bylaws 2024 this evening. A bylaw to repeal inoperative, obsolete, expired, or otherwise ineffective bylaws to maintain an organized and current legal framework for the city of Macomb. Administration has recently identified 10 additional outdated bylaws that were not addressed in the 2018 repealing process and are now proposed for repeal. 8 of these bylaws are offsite levy bylaws that were not repealed when newer versions were enacted. The current process for offsite levy bylaws now includes an automatic repeal clause to avoid similar oversights. Bylaw 294 and its amendment bylaw 294.1, enacted in 2002 to regulate municipal service corridors, have been superseded by the road use permit under section 12 of traffic bylaw 506. Bylaw 85, which sets terms of office for citizen members of various boards and commissions, is now outdated. These boards and commissions have since adopted their own bylaws and policies, making bylaw 85 unnecessary. On August 12, 2024, the first reading of bylaw 521 was received, which aims to repeal these inactive bylaws and was approved by council. Administration is now recommending second and third readings of bylaw 521 to finalize this cleanup effort. Should council pass the third reading of bylaw 521, several policies related to the repealed bylaws will also need to be rescinded in accordance with the governance document framework policy. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So I think in the past we had many items that were put forward from Director Pichet and her team. And it's times like this with this exciting work towards offsite levies that I wish we had maybe left out a few of the appointed dog catchers and other exciting things that we had from the early 1900s on some of the earlier repeals. But in any event, they still need to be dealt with. Councillor Konik.
I would so move that council give second reading of bylaw 521, repeal of inactive bylaws 2024.
Thank you. Any input? Please go ahead and vote. in favor unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Ross, is your machine not working?
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's my apologies, my fault. That's all
Councillor
good.
Ross?
The council
Oh,
resolves. to
actually, just hang on 1 second here. I think we're in for a battery change. That'll help alleviate any concerns there was on the technical end. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Councillor Ross.
The council resolves to consider the third reading of bylaw 521 at the same meeting as second reading.
Any input? Please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimously in favor. Councillor Hibbs.
I would go ahead and move that council give third reading to bylaw 521, repeal of inactive bylaws 2024.
Thank you. Last chance for input on this exciting housekeeping item. Please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimously in favor as well. It is 10 or 12 more off the books. 10 more. 10 additional items. Thank you. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make the motion that council rescinds the offsite levy costs policy 66/242 period 0287 BL.
And I see no input. So please go ahead and vote. Passed unanimously. Councillor Konik.
I also move that council rescinds the offsite levy cost policy 66/243.01 87 BL.
Thank you. Please go ahead and vote. And that is passed unanimously as well. Councillor Ross.
The council rescinds offsite levy cost policy 66/243.02 87 BL.
Thank you. No input. Please go ahead and vote. That is unanimously in favor. Councillor Hibbs.
And please allow me to do the last motion. That council rescinds the offsite levy costs policy 66/45188 BL.
Thank you. Please go ahead and vote. And that is passed unanimously. And with that last fury, I think we have increased our time to motion vote substantially. So municipal affairs will be sending us a gold star, I'm sure. Next up is Director Thompson on item 6.7, the 2023 water audit results. And before you begin, I think there's an expectation of some motions on there, and I would think that perhaps we may want to adjust it so that it can be brought back at a further date. We have one counselor who this has been extremely important to, and I think should be here for the vote. Just my opinion. Director Thompson.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. If you thought that was exciting, I do have some audit results for you regarding our water system. I'm happy to present the results of the 2023 water audit. This is our third audit conducted in compliance with the American Waterworks Association guidelines. The attached audit report was a collaborative effort of our utilities, finance, and IT staff, and it provides an in-depth analysis of our water system, identifying areas of water loss, which allows us to develop targeted strategies for improvement. Lacombe residents consumed an average of 150 liters of water per person per day in 2023. This is notable as it's 45 liters less than the average consumption across Alberta. For the 2023 calendar year, our water loss was reduced to 13.9%, which is approaching the national average of 13.3%, the loss target for the city of Lacombe. Real water loss, measured in dollars per connection per year, dropped to $66 in 2023, and real losses measured in liters per connection per day dropped to 84 liters in 2023. In both cases, Lacombe is showing significant improvement. Several factors have contributed to these water loss reductions. One, the recalibration of the city's pump house meters. Two, maintenance of pressure sustaining valves in our distribution system. Three, lowering the average system pressure set point. Four, we've had less significant water pipe breaks in 2023, including repairing 2 leaks going directly into the wastewater main. And five, the installation of a seasonal water meter at the city's RV sanitary dump site. The water balance for 2023 shows that we purchased 14.2% more water from the North Red Deer River Water Services Commission than we sold to city customers. However, when accounting for authorized but unmetered uses, such as firefighting and unidirectional flushing, our water loss adjusts down to 13.9%. Our improvement action plan prioritizes ensuring the accuracy of our pump house meters, as even inaccuracies, minor inaccuracies can significantly impact water audit results. We've also started transitioning to new Mach 10 water meters throughout the city, which are more accurate in low flow situations and contain no moving parts. The details of our action plan are outlined in the attached Appendix A. Water loss directly impacts our operating costs, and by minimizing these losses and planning for long-term system improvements, we ensure that our water system remains financially viable for years to come. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Director Thompson. When I first read this, when you were talked about liters per connection loss, it made it sound like every connection in the entire city is inherently faulty and losing water. And then I expect some members of the public might get the same gist, but basically that's just a way of putting perspective on it to gauge against other systems and other communities to see where we stand. Is that a fair assessment?
That's exactly right. A percent loss number has two variables you're comparing: the amount of water that you purchased and the amount of water that you sold. And those things, both of those variables change year over year. So if you could lose the same amount of water this year as you did last year, but if you have a different amount of water you purchased, that can change your percentage. And it kind of throws off a year-to-year comparison. And so a more accurate and better metric for year-to-year comparison, supported by the Alberta Waterworks Association, are these two, among others that they have for KPIs. And so that's why we're also reporting on them. But you're exactly right. It's a way of getting a snapshot of kind of how our system compares to other urban systems who utilize the same methodology to do their water audit.
Thank you. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. These numbers are excellent, and it's fantastic that we are trending in this direction. And I also think it's admirable that the community, it appears to be, kind of conscious of the amount of water they use comparatively, but the real impact of this is thousands of dollars to our budget, and in a positive way. And I think this is fantastic, and it's amazing that we can continue to do this, because those funds, it was just essentially money down the drain, and we can recoup those costs now and use them more effectively in the community. So kudos to the teams that have been working on this, and the city for finding these issues and resolving them. And we can only continue to get better, hopefully. Thank you.
Councillor Conick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Dallas. It's very encouraging to see the numbers go the other way. And I know Councillor Gullickson can't be here with us tonight, but I know this is something that was near and dear, and he was pushing very hard on this. And I know he can look at this agenda item when he does get back, but at any rate, we still have to bring it forward a motion. So I would move that council acknowledge the 2023 water audit results report.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Please go ahead and vote. An interesting one that we wouldn't acknowledge the results of the report, but this does put it on the books. That is unanimously in favor. So unless I'm mistaken, I believe that takes us down to item 6.10. Very good. Councillor Ross, you had a proposed motion or a notice of motion from our August 12th meeting. I'll give you an opportunity to read that into the record, please.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. My notice of motion is the council directs administration to investigate the use of subclassing residential property as defined in section 297 in brackets 2 of the Municipal Government Act to encourage property owners to maintain their properties in compliance with the community standards bylaw. I will further include these MGA section 297 brackets 2 is a council may by bylaw divide class 1 into subclasses on any basis it considers appropriate. And if the council does so, the assessor may assign one or more subclasses to property in class 1. That is explaining this section of 297 bracket 2. If you want me to explain my intentions now, or is that after?
Absolutely, please.
So in watching on the news, global news, the city of Edmonton is exploring this bylaw to assist their administration as a tool to then for derelict properties and so forth. And I guess it's always been a passion of myself, even from the first term, is the enforcement of community standards, our community standards bylaws that as council as a whole has put together with the expectations that they be enforced and delivered for the whole benefit of the city and the citizens. My frustration is at times I feel like the time of the administration of CEO Gowdy, Director Piché, our staff, to carry out, for example, an enforcement, basically they receive a bill for example, mowing the grass, which really, that's basically a custom operator going to clean up the yard. So in essence, an arrogant way could be, thank you for mowing my grass. I would have had to pay somebody anyways. I think this could be taken further and reviewing our procedures of enforcement. I'd like to see stronger enforcement of our bylaw without being complaint driven, and so that as a tool for our enforcement and our staff to have a further penalty, for example, through taxation penalties and so forth. And I guess I would like administration to bring back how it may be working that option, if it is with other municipalities, to come forth to go further with the penalty beyond just paying for service. I feel like we're providing a service to clean up this property, and we're giving them a bill for the service, but it's being repeated. And I think this is very inefficient, very time consuming for our administration and our staff. And you can drive by and see the same repeated offenders, and it's something's not working. So if I may ask CO Gowdy to maybe more elaborate of how it may proceed, I guess, with a notice of motion to in that sense.
Thanks, Councillor Ross. CO Gowdy, did you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, so Councillor Ross and I have discussed this a couple of times. And just to give the rest of council an understanding of where this would go if you pass this motion this evening, we would look to schedule a committee meeting to discuss that. We'd do some research and look at how's the city of Edmonton using this tool? Are there other municipalities who've made use of the ability to subclass residential property? If so, is it successful? What are they using that to do? We would bring that information to your committee meeting, and you would have a discussion about whether that was something you wanted to pursue using 297-2, which allows you to subclass residential property into any number of classes that you see fit. So we would be doing some research, bringing you something back to a committee meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I have to admit that I'm curious about this motion, but I'm also a little bit skeptical. In the case of Edmonton, as was mentioned, this is to do with derelict properties. We're not talking about a property that hasn't been mowing its lawn all year. These are dilapidated houses that need to be bulldozed over, that have people that are squatting in them, that are real fire and danger. They are a real hazard to the community and attract, some less than stellar type of activity. So I'm not quite sure how that looks in our community. I'm not really aware of a lot of houses that I would at least classify as a derelict home in this community. Maybe. So I'm a little bit skeptical as to how this could possibly achieve a tightening of community standards. But that being said, another category that was of interest when I was looking into this a bit more was the subclassing of vacant lots as well. Again, in a situation where you've got properties that are sitting for extended period of time, whether they were ever developed or whether they were, had a house or a building and then was bulldozed and now have remained, undeveloped. Perhaps that is something we could look at as well. So I guess I realize that this motion is just talking about community standards bylaw, but with the example of vacant lots, we have a number of those that are, in terrible shape. I wouldn't call them derelict properties, but they are definitely a blight on the neighborhood in some cases. So I guess that would be my only comment. I will vote in favor of this just because of my curiosity is great. This is possibly something that could be something, but I am skeptical.
Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess probably my questions will be answered more in a committee meeting, but I'm sorry, excuse my ignorance, but what do you mean by subclassing? Like, you're changing the zoning? Are you changing the use? Are you changing, does it affect property values? I'm trying to figure it out in my head.
So I haven't done a lot of research on it. I'm aware of the City of Edmonton component. 297-2 allows you to subclass residential property. So you could say, I'm going to have one for vacant lots, and any residential lot that is vacant, I'm going to charge twice the mill rate or half the mill rate, whatever, or you could say all red houses pay twice as much tax in Macomb, or you could say, similar to a licensing system where you get a number of demerits for infractions, moving violations, those could count towards your tax rate. So you could say, well, if this property experiences more than 3 community standards violations in 1 year, they are to be given a 10%. They're moved into a different class of sort of like bad properties, and they get some sort of a tax raise, 10% or 25% or something. Again, I haven't looked into it a lot. That's what it appears that the MGA permits. There is the ability to subclass commercial properties. That's been in place for some time. And so you can subclass between small business and large business, for example, to provide a different tax rate. The same regulations that exist for non-residential properties do not exist for residential properties. There, it's up to the council to use any determination you see fit to make those subclasses.
Okay, it's interesting to look into further. It sounds complicated to me. I mean, what happens when property changes hands? Does the class change? Sounds like a work for lawyers. Is there a lawyer in the house? No.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Thank you for working on this notice of motion. I am grateful to have had it brought forward and especially to do some more reading on it. And I do look forward to seeing it at a committee meeting and seeing this and whether or not it's plausible for one use. I certainly see applications of it regardless. So I'm interested in seeing how we can investigate this and see what can be done with it going forward. Thank you.
So for myself, I can't help but think this was certainly not an anticipated use of this clause. However, I suppose it could be applicable. I just caution us to try and keep in mind what our ultimate goal is with this. And I appreciate Councillor Ross putting the work in to come up with this, because there are a limited number of properties that are problematic and repeat offenders. However, I'm not necessarily sold that we've given the proper amount of time to go through the enforcement actions that we did increase fines for, in some cases rather significantly, that I would like to think will have the desired effect in time as well. Because quite frankly, even if this were to hold up legally, which I think is probably an interesting thing all on its own, we would still have to have some basis for adding someone to a different class, which probably would result from infractions of the community standards bylaw. So that work still has to go into it anyway. So yeah, this is a problematic one, but it's interesting. I guess I would like some indication of what type of our input or what type of work are we looking at from administration to put something forward for us to consider some of these items. Because like many of you, I'm curious about it, but I think it's going to be problematic on several fronts, and I'm not interested in devoting a ridiculous amount of administrative time to investigate it. However, if it's not a huge time commitment, it's interesting.
So I'm anticipating that should this pass, I would go to a staff member and have them pull the tax rate bylaws for all municipalities within our comparator group and those urban municipalities that would be the size of Lacombe and larger, so largely mid-sized cities plus Edmonton, Calgary. That will tell us whether they are using the subclassing of residential property to apply different mill rates for reasons. If they are, I anticipate it'll be very few that are, then we would seek out information on those bylaws that allow them to do so, see what their purpose is, bring those to council. We'll draft them RFD to add a committee meeting for this purpose. And then we'll draft an RFD with a few sort of blue sky. You know, what are you hoping to achieve? Here's some possible options. Here's what we see is being used. So I would estimate 10 to 12 hours of administrative time to create the committee meeting setting to have this discussion with the information required.
Thank you. And would that include posing the question to municipal affairs as well?
Yes, I failed to mention that.
Because I think that's an important one. I think that could preclude a lot of other operations. But once again, it's interesting to find out. Very good. I see nobody else up on the board. We've all had our say. No more input. Please go ahead and vote. Very interesting. That is unanimously in favor. So I have went over the next meetings, and I believe that all we have left are in-camera items. Is that correct, Coordinator Belbono? Very good. So it is 8:01. Councillor Conick.
Motion to move in camera.
Thank you. Once we get the indication from IT that the recording is ceased, then we will be in camera. Isn't that interesting? I'm looking at IT and he's looking at me thinking, so do you plan on voting on any of this? I appreciate your persistence, Mr. Tomnick. Please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimously in favor.